Welcome to the channel. My name is Aldrich. I'm a final year engineering student at the University of Sheffield, and today I want to share with you how I've been taking notes in lectures with my iPad and Apple Pencil. The best way for me to communicate this video is by splitting this video into 5 parts. The first part I talk about why I bought the iPad and give my experience with handwriting your notes versus typing your notes. The second part I talk about which tablets that you can buy. The third part is I talk about my actual setup, what app I use and how I use the app itself. The fourth part I talk about 3 different examples on how I take notes for maths lectures and say more content heavy lectures like my law module. The fifth part I talk about my general thoughts of owning an iPad and some of the things the iPad can't solve. I know this is a long video, so please, I'm encouraging you to use the timestamps below so you can skip around to the things that you find most useful, or you can even watch the whole thing. It's entirely up to you. But with that out of the way, let's jump right into the video. Hey, so during my 3 years of experience in university, I've tried handwriting my notes on paper and typing my notes up on computer, and I can tell you firsthand that there are advantages and disadvantages to both. For first year, it was a no-brainer for me to take handwritten notes on paper because that's what I've been used to from 6th form, year 11 and dating all the way back to primary school. The main advantage of handwriting your notes is that it's much better for your conceptual understanding of the topic and you're able to retain the information for longer. And it's because handwriting your notes is much more slower and more tedious than typing, which is a disadvantage. But it's because of that disadvantage you have to become more selective with what you write down. You have to be more careful with what you write down, so you pay attention but don't lose focus. So you're basically processing and summarizing the information in a way that works well for your brain. However, the biggest disadvantage of handwriting your notes is the accessibility factor. Handwriting your notes on paper requires you to become incredibly organized because you'll have to not only buy folders and buy folder dividers to file that information in a neat order. In terms of being in the lecture, you have to be present whilst trying to write down the important parts, and that's sometimes unmanageable because some engineering lectures, right, they talk like it's Martian, right? It's just a load of gibberish. They speak so fast, so technical, and they sometimes forget that we're undergraduates, you know, and it's like, it's just so much information being thrown at you and it can be overwhelming. It was because of those disadvantages that I've experienced in first year I wanted to change my approach for the first semester of second year, and that's why I tried typing up my notes instead. The main advantage of typing a note is that everything is easy to find because everything is in one place, one computer. And another advantage was that I was able to make more notes in the lecture, so I was able to listen to the lecture more, but at the same time write more notes. However, with all this in mind, this leads me on to the main disadvantage of typing in notes, and that's that I wasn't actually retaining anything from the lecture. I found out that since I have a fast typing speed, I was actually transcribing the lecture at me, right? So at the end of the lecture, I would sit in the library and I would have so many pages of just raw text and bullet points and paragraphs, and learning the content was just so bland, so dull. It was kind of like eating porridge without any honey or peanut butter. It's actually quite dead. With all that in mind, the second semester of second year, I was so keen on trying to find a solution. I was so keen of, could I have the advantages of both note-taking approaches and eliminate the disadvantages? And that's where having a tablet comes in, and this is why I have the iPad particularly. Plus, I don't have to worry about paper anymore, which is pretty sick. But the caveat of owning a tablet is that it is expensive, and it will be the limiting factor for most students out there, since these are pricey. But I saved up, and throughout this video I want to share with you how I actually used this tablet. So if you're looking to buy an iPad, or you've had those same problems of me in first year and second year, then I would continue watching this video. There are two types of tablets that you can buy in the market. You can buy a Windows tablet or a Apple tablet, but this video will focus on how I use the iPad, but don't get it twisted. The same principles of note-taking applies to whatever device you're planning to buy. I'll have a list of different tablets that you can buy on the screen now. If you're looking to buy an Apple tablet, then I would recommend you buy either the iPad 8 or the iPad Air 4, and I'll link a video in the description below to check out a video comparison. So I'd recommend you watch that because it's actually pretty good and it should help you make an informed decision. Quick disclaimer, don't get it twisted and think that once you own an iPad or a tablet in general that all your student problems will disappear, alright, or that your uni content would just click better, and unfortunately it doesn't work like that. There are plenty of people in my course that are doing better than me academically and they don't own a tablet. Tablets in general is just a tool for students, and like any tool, it's only as good as the person behind the screen. I am using a refurbished iPad Pro with 256 gigabytes and an Apple Pencil, and I use an app called GoodNotes to take all my notes. I store all my uni content in here as well, so lecture slides, tutorial sheets, assignment briefings, I do my exam papers here, I do my notes, like I said, basically everything paper related. I have a PDF version of it on this app. Within the app I have different folders and I've split it into spring semester and autumn semester. Within the autumn semester I have all my modules clearly organized, and then I have subfolders with lectures in them, theme 1s, theme 2, I have tutorial sheets, I can go on to different modules. Everything is clearly organized for me, and if I would have had all of this on paper if I didn't have the iPad, and as you can imagine the amount of organization you'd need to store all this stuff, it's mad, right? When taking notes, my pencil case is replaced by all these items from the top bar here. I can choose different pen styles. I always use the fountain pen. You can change different color of the pen. You can have different thickness of the pens. You can rub, you can highlight, draw shapes if you wanted to. I tend to use the black pen. You know, I write, this is what writing looks like, and I could highlight that. I could even draw could this work? A box like that, and I would do this for the entirety of my university degree. I can draw red shapes like I've done there. I can change colors. Basically, this pencil case, everything I'm able to do on paper, I'm able to do on the tablet. Although GoodNotes is a paid app, if you consider the cost of folders, subdividers, the notebooks you need, and the organization of all of that, the app GoodNotes is definitely worth its price. For people concerned about storage, I've had this tablet for a year, and as you can see with the amount of sheets that I have, the amount of pretty much lecture slides that I own from second year, third year, like all these pieces of paper, as you can see, right? All this is only using 2 gigabytes of storage. So if you're looking to buy the 64 gigabyte configuration, then honestly, I think that would be more than enough if you're somebody who is going to use this device as a note-taking, purely for note-taking. Now let's move on to how I take notes in lectures, and I hope to illustrate that to you using 3 examples and talk about what I do before, during, and after the lecture. This first example is from a lecture from my state-space control design module, and you don't need to understand any of it, but basically how this is assessed is that it's 10% coursework and 90% exam, which means I have to take notes and do practice questions to do well on this module. So before any lecture, what I would do is I would go to Blackboard and download a PDF version of the slides, and I would make notes directly on the lecture slides. After I've done that, I will scroll down to the recap and aims section and read all of this pretty much. I would see what it is that I'm going to learn out of this lecture, and this pretty much paints the dots in my mind. It pretty much tells me what value I'm going to get if I watch this lecture. And after I've read the aims and the recap, I would scroll all the way down to the summary, and I would see that, modeling a system is by far the hardest part in this. Therefore, it is essential for me to become more proficient at turning stuff into state space form. And after I've decided, okay, I better watch this lecture, then I watch the lecture. I pretty much open up my laptop in front of me and I watch it from there. I then just read, listen, scroll down, make notes. I'd write down here, this is what taking notes is like on the iPad, right? I would constantly draw arrows. I would not only draw squares, circles, pretty much anything that helps me understand the content. And I would pretty much do it for here, like here. See, I've drawn arrows, I've drawn a black box. I made sure I understand what this F means, what this function is, what these signals are. I will scroll down. I can see that I can use MATLAB to ensure that I've got the right matrices. I can use different color pens. Like here I used navy, right, to illustrate important things. And I've just drew so many arrows to make sure that I understand the flow of this lecture pretty much. Then I would just listen, continue making notes, yada 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 yada, continue making notes, continue making notes, continue making notes. When it comes to technical examples like this slide, then I would make the extra effort to pause the video, write down what he's saying, because it's a process, it's a mathematical process that I need to be aware of. I need to know step 1A, B, C, D, step 2A, 2B, 2C. I need to make sure I understand that process. So it's quite messy here. And then continue, end of the lecture. As you can see from the summary slide at the very end, that it's referring me to go to a tutorial sheet. And that's exactly what I do. I download the tutorial sheets from my uni website, and it says here what? Sheet 1, lecture 2 exercises. So sheet 1, lecture 2 right there. And then I would just read it and then have a go on my own here. As you can see, example 2 from lectures, this was this messy example. I thought that if I wrote it down more systematically, that it would make more sense, and I would use colors like green to make sure I do the green part first, then the pink part first. It just pretty much helps me with my just distinguishing different parts of the question. And here's me doing the tutorial questions, and when I get stuck, then I would read the solutions. So here it's tutorial sheet 1, here's the lecture 2, then say if I was stuck on 2A, right? Then I would go on 2A, read the solutions, blah 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 blah, and understand it and try to make a understanding of it basically. And if I don't get it, then I would normally DM a course mate, or no, I'd DM a course mate for help. So yeah, that's pretty much what I do after the lecture. So that's the process overall. I download the lecture from my uni. I read this first slide because it's super important, so I know exactly why I'm sitting in this lecture and I'm not completely lost. I'm not asking myself during the lecture, what is it I'm actually got to get out of it? What is it that I'm actually getting out of this lecture, you know? And then after that, I scroll all the way down and I read this entire section. I read it. I don't focus on understanding it. It's just for exposure, okay? It's exposing me, so I'm familiar with what it is that I'm going to learn. I'm not focused and keen about making sure I understand everything, because I'm not. It's just for exposure. All right, that's important. And then after I do that, then I press play and then watch the lecture, use highlighters, draw arrows, make sure I get stuff, pause certain parts of the video, rewind, fast forward, etc, etc. And then after the lecture, that's when I do tutorial sheets. I have a go myself, then I go to the solutions. If I get stuck, then I have a go again, then I look at the lecture, then solutions, then have a go. It's this iterative process basically, and that's what helps me learn with pretty much most of my modules, and that's how it's laid out for me. For this module, I'll take the exact same process of taking notes directly from the slides, but since this lecture doesn't have the aims conveniently set out, nor does it have a conclusion, that's why I take the method of what I did in example 1 a little step further. I'll show you what I mean. So before the lecture, I would instead just read the highlighted, like I'll just read the main headings, like there's an example, yada yada yada, just to get a feel of what kind of content I'm learning. And then during the lecture, I would again process the lecture, write my notes as I would do, draw arrows, highlight, all that stuff. Then after the lecture, notice I have all these slides, right? I condense it all into one piece of paper. So like this. So this lecture is called Operations of Logic on Fuzzy Sets, right? So I have a summary sheet of this exact lecture, and having these summary sheets conveniently in one piece of paper, highlighting all the key ideas of what I need to be aware of, instead of having to constantly scroll down to see what it is I'm learning, it's just so much more convenient. And I feel like this is necessary because I don't have those aims and I don't have the conclusion that I did in my previous lecture. So having summary notes for each week, it really does help. Also, after the lecture, I would do the tutorial sheets. So I would read the questions, give it a go, and then see the solutions. Then I would read the questions, give it a go, read the solutions, and iteratively change between those 3 steps. And that's what helps me learn this module. For my last example, and in final year, I'm doing a compulsory module called Law and Finance. The way this module is assessed is with an exam that's worth 100% of our grades, and it's open book and it's multiple choice. I thought the best way to revise such a module, the way how the questions are set out, is literally by reading the slides and answering questions and testing myself with questions. Let me show you what I mean. So before the lecture, I would read each heading of the slides, right? Just to give me an idea and a feel of what kind of content I'm expected to do. Then during the lecture, I would play the lecture, make notes, but here's a little confession. I haven't actually been watching the lectures since the slides itself is pretty self-explanatory. So I skip during the lecture phase and go straight into what I do after the lectures. After the lectures are done, I would skim read through the lectures again. Then I would write down the corresponding questions to each slide. So for here, for example, what is IP? I would write it there. I would write what is IP. Then say remedies for infringement of IP law. So I said, oh, what are the remedies for? You see how I'm breaking it down to each individual questions, right? And I do this for each slide for the law component of this exam. After I finish writing down these lists of questions, that's when I answer it in my own head and pretend that I'm teaching these concepts to a 5-year-old. And I figured if I can explain this so simple in such simple language, right, then it means I fully understand the topic. And for this module, I'm not given tutorial sheets, I'm given seminar sheets. So for here example, it's called IP property seminar. So I'm reading a scenario and I'm using the concepts that I've gathered into my head, that I've explained to a fake 5-year-old, and tried to apply this into a real life scenario. Personally, I think this is the most efficient way of revising this module, purely because it saves me time by repeating, copyright is seeks to protect the tangible. Notice I'm just writing down what I'm writing here, and I figured if I was to write my notes, I would just be repeating myself because the definition's already there. Overall, I'm just basically saving myself time so I can do other things. Did you notice how I adapted my note-taking approach based on how the content is delivered and what content is delivered? That's what you need to do. You need to adapt, because like every lecturer thinks differently, and every lecturer has a different way of how they'd want their students to process their ideas and their concepts. So it's your job, our job, to process, to somehow get what's in their mind, right, and sort of encapsulate it in a way that makes sense to you, right? That's the main takeaway of this video, and just to adapt to the situation. Although the iPad is an amazing note-taking device, there are some things I don't use the iPad for in university. Things like group assignments, presentations. I don't use it for making CAD designs, I don't use it for coding assignments, and I don't use it to write up my individual reports or my final dissertation. But those things, I actually have a laptop, and I also need the laptop to use MATLAB, which is a very popular programming language for University of Sheffield engineers. For my general thoughts as a student, basically, I think the iPad is an amazing device, and I'm able to access so many different tools. Basically, replace this pencil case. I feel like this iPad has generally helped me with my productivity, because I've invested so much money into a tablet. I feel compelled to do more work, and I'm also feel like I still have the same student problems of procrastinating and doing other things, getting distracted. Like, this iPad has not solved all my student problems. In terms of the iPad being a note-taking device, it does an excellent job in doing that. You're able to see like how I've done it in my notes, that I've made it look pretty. I've done summary sheets. I was able to write directly from the slides. But although I'm able to do that, I'm still a student. I'm still far behind work. I'm still learning with my course mates and stuff. And I'm basically saying that the iPad hasn't solved all my student problems, but purely as a note-taking device, ooh, this is A1 stuff. Hey, you've reached the end of the video. Just want to say Happy New Year, first of all. I hope you've made your New Year's resolutions and that you're going to stick with them. But back to the video, I hope you're able to use the timestamp, skip around the video, absorb whatever you feel is useful. And if you have any more questions, feel free to comment them below. And yeah, just want to say Happy New Year again. I hope you're safe, I hope you're healthy, and I hope you achieve your goals for 2021. Alright, I think that's gonna be it for me. Have a good day. Alright, safe.